everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master and Pro Player, and we are going to continue the review of all the new cool Merfolk cards coming out of Rivals of Ixalan. And so the new hotshot that's made a big splash, or I don't know, powered through on the Merfolk scene is Swift Warden. A 3/3 creature for 2 green and 1 generic. It is a Merfolk warrior, has flash, and whenever Swift Warden enters the battlefield, target Merfolk you control gains hexproof until end of turn. Man, when I saw this card, I was like, this card is amazing. If only it was a little bit more castable. Double green is a bit harsh on our mana base. It sort of looks out of reach for a traditional Merfolk deck, or even if we want to splash something. But, you know, I started thinking, let's say it wasn't a problem. We could cast this for anything. Let's say it was double blue and 1 colorless. Is it still great? Because here's the thing, it looks so appealing. It's very interactive with our opponents against attrition-based decks. Flash is amazing, we'll get into that soon. But I have a lot of practice and experience with Rattle Chains, which is a spirit card, 1 blue, 1 colorless, 2/1 flying creature, so it has evasion, has flash, and it also gives a spirit hexproof when it enters the battlefield. And while it's in play, all other spirits that are not in play that I control have flash. So that card was bananas on the card. However, in play, it was just good enough to be actually good. And it had all sorts of problems that you wouldn't expect unless you actually played with the deck. So the first one is it is great when you're ahead. When you're ahead, it puts pressure on your opponent to use removal spells on your creatures. Which is fantastic, because then you flash in the Rattle Chains, you counter that card, and now they're super way behind, and you're gonna close out the game very comfortably. However, what if you're not ahead? What if you're behind? In that case, you're the one who has to tap out. And when you do that, then you're vulnerable to the removal spells anyway. The Rattle Chains didn't really help you. And so that's what I'm sort of looking at right now with the Swift Warden. The hexproof thing, it looks great, but it's not enough to put this sort of card way over the top. Like so when we play our 3rd land drop and then pass, like what are we gonna do when our opponent doesn't do anything at the end of their turn? Are we gonna just play our Swift Warden for nothing? You know, not in response to a removal spell? Because after we play the Swift Warden, they're just gonna kill it with something, or kill whatever other creature is in play. Which is not super terrible, because we're making them use their removal on their turn and not on our turn, so there is a win there. But this has more to do with the fact that flash is involved more than anything. The flash looking really good on a card like this. But I just want to say that the hexproof is very hard to utilize. It's not as easy as it looks. However, I think with Ether Vial, this card will end up being a bomb, because you can either play things through Ether Vial and always have Swift Warden to back it up, or you can like hard cast things and then use Ether Vial to vial in Swift Warden. So there is synergy there, but without the Ether Vial, I think the hexproof ability by itself is going to look clunky. That aside, the flash thing is great. It's like Harbinger of the Tides. You can help play around sorcery speed removal. Yeah, so let's get in on the flash thing. Flash is great. So against control decks, the Supreme Verdict, and then you can just flash this guy in, and there's nothing wrong with that. 3/3 creature, it's like Delver of Secrets, puts a big clock on our opponents. Not to mention, if they try to block with Colonnade, we could like vial in a Lord of Atlantis and it would trade. This thing will trade with a lot of things, by the way. 3/3 creature, very serious. You want to lightning bolt it? Well, we put the Lord in play with Ether Vial, and all of a sudden that's neutered. You want to block with Thought-Knot Seer? Well, now we're going to trade when we put a Lord in play. So the Lords make this thing really big. 4/4 creature, not a joke whatsoever. And if we have 2 Lords in play, then it's out of control at a 5/5 creature. So that it's really good in that manner. And I also think that the flash is very good when we want to be holding up interaction when we're up against combo decks. So, which will bring me into what kind of decks I think this card will be good in. I think this card will be I think it will be so-so against attrition-based decks. I honestly think so, because we're going to be siding out Aether Vial against those decks. I don't think it's worth it to keep Aether Vial in the deck just to have a Swift Warden. Yeah, I don't think the Hexproof ability is as good as it looks on paper, because you're constantly going to be put in a situation where you got your third land drop. Do I hard cast Merfolk, or do I just pass the turn to cast a Swift Warden at end of turn? And you're going to be in a situation where maybe they play Tarmogoyf and hold up 2 mana and then pass back to you. So you have the option of staying behind on the board or playing Swift Warden at instant speed, but then they're gonna, now that they know that you're tapped out, then they're gonna use their removal spell. So I think against attrition-based decks, it's not gonna be as good as it looks. It's just going to be fine. Playing things at flash speed are still good because it gets around, you know, Anger of the Gods and planeswalkers like Liliana the Veil, and Maelstrom Pulse, and Damnation, and so on. So in that regard, it will be fine, but it won't be a huge bomb. I think against creature deck versus creature deck, this thing's gonna suck. It's just 3 mana for 3/3 creature with flash, but doesn't really interact with creatures. It just interacts with removal spells, which our opponents may have very few of, and especially since it's going to be very creature-centric, we're probably going to prioritize putting our lords on the battlefield over wanting to hold this thing up. So I think it's going to end up being pretty weird against things like Death and Taxes or Eldrazi-tron, those sort of matchups. Humans. You know what? Humans, it will be like maybe okay. It might be okay. You know, countering a Reflector Mage target is not irrelevant. But what if they don't play Reflector Mage? What if they just play, I don't know, what's it called? Mantis Rider, Champion of the Parishes, Thalia's Lieutenant. I mean, the thing is still a 3/3 creature, but for 3 mana, we might be wanting to play something else. But lastly, I would think that this card is very good against the combo decks, because we can play it with flash. It doesn't even matter most of the time what's on the battlefield against the combo decks. All that's important is that there's like some random grizzly bear, and then we're keeping our defense with counter spells. So, which is great, is whatever we do on turn 1, who cares? Turn 2 we play Lord of Atlantis or Silvergill Adept or something, pass, and then on turn 3 we can hold up counterspells while also holding up Swift Warden. It's not super expensive like Harbinger of the Tides. This is very easy to cast against combo decks, at least combo decks that can't combo off at instant speed. It won't be super great against Ad Nauseam, but it will be playable against, for example, Storm. Storm at best can just play Gifts Ungiven, but can't combo off on the same turn. So we are able to increase our board presence while holding up counterspells. I think it would be really good against, for example, the Titan Shift deck. So we don't overextend into an Anger of the Gods. We just have one Silvergill Adept out there. Do you want to kill it or not? And if you ever make a move in the future, we'll still have those counterspells. And just keep playing these Swift Wardens at instant speed at end of turn. So it's still relevant. Like, you can counter a Valakut trigger that is targeting one of the Merfolk. So I think this card will be very good against combo decks. I think it will be good against, I think it will be also good against control decks. I think it's going to be so-so against attrition-based decks, just because of my experience with Rattle Chains, and I think it's just going to be poor against creature decks. It's just going to be sort of a clunky creature. Now, I could be wrong because it's still beefy. 3/3, very important. I don't have a lot of experience with like Merfolk that start off at 3/3, because it could end up being like a 5/5 creature like super quickly. And yeah, 5/5 Merfolk. That can close out the game very quickly with Spreading Seas. And maybe one last thing about the beefy 3/3-ness, it dodges so much more removal by default. Like, Collective Brutality doesn't kill it, Flaying Tendrils doesn't kill it, Whip Flare doesn't kill it, Pyroclasm doesn't kill it. Many cards are now useless against this thing. And of course it has the upside of, you know, giving something hexproof. So maybe the flash thing is just good enough. Maybe it's just great that we have a 3-mana flash creature that situationally is a counter spell to a spell or ability that targets one of our Merfolk. and it will require, again, it'll take some playtesting to know where it stands in Modern. Maybe before we close the discussion, we should talk about what it is in Standard. I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea where this guy plays in Standard. There's going to be a lot of interesting 3-drops that can compete in the Standard deck. But I should mention that, you know, we could have like up to 20 cards that are 3 CMC plus. I mean, it's not super unusual. The deck might be like a little clunky, but, you know, Standard is slower than, say, Modern or Legacy. So there's a lot of people are scared that some cards are going to be competing with others, but it's possible that you can just jam them all. We can play quite a few heavy lifting creatures in Standard, and this most certainly can be one of them. Yeah, I have no problem with this guy at all. So Swift Warden, very interesting creature. It will be very interesting to see if, like, can we make the mana base work? Can this mana base work? Can we get the green for this guy? And then if we do, can this card pay off? I don't know. I think it's hard. I think the mana cost is hard. And maybe the last thing I should mention is that perhaps cards like this, if it's really good, might open the door to a base mono green Merfolk deck with a blue splash instead. Maybe that's possible. Maybe with all these new goodies, we'll erupt a new Merfolk deck of the other side of the color pie. So, if there's anything I've missed, you should let me know in the comments section below. This has been Nikachu evaluating Swift Warden, one of the newest cards coming out of Rivals of Ixalan.